Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Northy33 and welcome to a tank build for ESO. Now I have in recent months made quite a few tank videos to do my build on the Elder Scrolls Online, and they sort of range from, I think it was the Absorber and the Juggernaut on my latest videos on my tank. But my tank recently, I changed up a few of the skills and a few of the champion points, and he can now take an incredible amount of damage in either trials, veteran dungeons, PvP, whatever. It's not really built for PvP, but you can take it in there. This is mainly for group delves and, like I say, veteran dungeons and trials. But you'll have a lot of fun with this tank because you basically can't die. So I'll go straight into the skills for you guys. I'll talk about the skills, I'll talk about the armor set that I use, and I'll talk about the champion points as well. And I'll try and put in some overlay for like some gameplay of actually using the tank view. So going in with the first bar, and this is my sword and shield bar, and the first ability that I have is Igneous Shield. Now this gives you a chance to call a damage shield on you and nearby allies for 5,500 damage, and your own personal damage shield also absorbs 200% additional damage, and it's really good. It lasts 7.2 seconds, but you also gain major mending, increasing your healing received by 25% for 3 seconds, which is very good. One of my main heals basically is Green Dragon Blood. This is the second ability I have on this bar. And there's only, I think, 2 abilities on my whole set that has magic. The rest of it is stamina based. So like I said, this is Green Dragon Blood. And this basically gives you a chance to heal for 42% of your missing health. And you also get Major Fortitude, Major Endurance, Minor Vitality, increasing your health recovery and stamina recovery by 20%, and healing received by 8% for 23 seconds. So this is a very good thing to have as well. Like I say, in trials and veteran dungeons, Green Blood is a very good thing to have in your tank. Obviously this is a Dragonknight, and this is the abilities from Dragonknight. My first of my sword and board abilities is Pierce Armor, and this is basically a taunt, so you actually do physical damage for 2,500 damage, and it taunts the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds, and it also afflicts the enemy with Major Fracture and Major Breach, reducing their physical resistance and spell resistance by 5,500 for 12 seconds. Like I say, this is basically just to get the attention of the enemies when you first run into a fight. So if you go into a boss, jab him with this and then get your shields up and you can stay alive. Obviously it keeps all the aggro off your 2 DPSs and your healer, or if you're in a bigger group, it keeps all the aggro off of your bigger group. Moving into the second sword and board ability, we have Defensive Posture. Obviously that's the morph, so we have Absorb Magic. This basically gives you a chance to boost your defensives, absorbing 27,500 damage from the next spell projectile cast at you and healing for 19% of your max health. So again, this is another little heal that you can use on yourself. And also when you have the shield equipped and this ability is slotted, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 8%, and the reduced cost is 8% as well. So anytime you're trying to block, it costs you less, and the damage you can take is increased by 8% too. So it's a very good thing to have, and it is one of the main shields that I tend to use along with Igneous Shield. The last of the shields that I use on the front bar is Bone Surge, and this is the morph of Bone Shield, and this basically gives you a chance to surround yourself with a shield that absorbs 34% of your max health for 6 seconds, and allies can get the synergy, and this can basically damage enemies around them for 3 seconds for 116% of their max health. And then you also gain Major Vitality, increasing the healing received by 30%, so your allies can get an increase in the heals, and so can you. Now, my main ultimate for this bar is Ferocious Leap, which is the morph from Dragon Leap, and this is not mainly for the damage that it can do, but it's mainly for the damage shield. So basically, after you've leapt, you then gain a damage shield for 119% of your max health for 6 seconds, and again, it's basically sort of like a last minute, if you're taking a lot of damage and the healer's not very good, just get this massive ultimate out and you get a really good damage shield to get your stats back up with whilst you're waiting for your other shields to come back in. Going on to the second bar, I'm also using Sword and Shield. This one I'm using Inner Rage, and this is the morph for Inner Fire, and this basically is another taunt for 15 seconds, so you can have a 30-second taunt using this and Pierce Armor, but this basically gives you a chance to get a synergy for your allies pretty much, and it taunts the enemy and has 36% chance to activate Radiate, which deals 1,035 magic damage to them over 2 seconds, and an additional 3,000 magic when the nearby enemies die. So it's sort of like area of effect at the same time, so it's a very good taunt to use, and you get a synergy and some damage from magic, which is very good. Going into one of the very last sword and board abilities that I use is Heroic Slash, which is the morph for Low Slash. Now, this is basically a chance just to stab your sword into the gut of the enemy in front of you, dealing 2,500 physical damage. but it mainly importantly reduces their movement speed by 60% for 4 seconds, and then it also afflicts the enemy with minor maim, reducing their damage done by 15 for 12 seconds, and you also gain minor heroism, granting you one ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. So if you're trying to stack up your ultimates, this is a very good thing to have. Just literally activate it and get all the synergies and the passives off of this, and you're going to get some ultimates very, very quickly. For crowd control, I use Burning Talons, and this is basically a set of claws that come through the floor and grab hold of the enemy. This morph in particular grabs the enemy and starts doing flame damage over time for 4 seconds, and then allies can synergize it and get a big explosion of fire for 3,500 damage to all enemies that are grabbed within the claws. So it's good for crowd control and area effect. I then use Volatile Armor, and this is mainly for the physical and spell resistant criticals. So basically your physical resistance and spell resistance is reduced by 5.5 for 20 seconds, 5,500, and you also release a spray of spikes around you, causing enemies hit to take 3,000 damage over 10 seconds. And it also does work as an aggro taunt as well. Obviously if somebody else walks in and starts attacking them, then the spikes aren't really going to do much apart from set fire to them. But if you walk in and procs this straight away, all the enemies are going to come after you until known otherwise, which is pretty decent. And then obviously while the ability is active, the armor returns 475 magic damage to melee attackers, so anything trying to hit you receives damage for the damage they do. I then use Deep Breath, which is the morph Inhale, and this is not for the damage again. This is so that you can basically set casters, anything that's about to cast, you can press this and it knocks them off balance and instantly stops their casts, which is very good to have. Obviously if you've got a boss, it won't actually interrupt the boss's charged attacks, but anyone like a healer or anything that's casting, you press this, the flame will come out and it will cast them and make them stun. So again, good for crowd control if you really need it. And then the last one I use for the ultimate on this bar, I do sometimes switch between Magma Shell, but I mainly use Dawnbreaker of Smiting, which is the Dawnbreaker morph, and this basically is an area of effect, but it's a cone in front of you for damage. You deal 4,500 physical damage to enemies in front of you, and an additional 4,500 physical damage over 5 seconds, and stunning them for 3 seconds. On top of that as well, for every enemy you hit, you also gain magic at stamina and health back. It's something they've not listed, but it's something you can get, so it's very, very good to have. Going into the passives, obviously, like I say, mostly I don't use any Ardent Flame. I do use Dragonic Power a lot, so make sure you get all the passives in Dragonic Power. And I've also got all the passives in Earthen Heart, which is very important to have for your shields and very important to have for your crowd control and volatile armors. Two-handed, don't worry about it. Obviously, one-hand and shield. Get all the passives for one-hand and shield, and the morphs, obviously, like I say, in the skill build. I don't have anything else. I have heavy armor, so make sure I don't use the shield, but make sure you get all the passives in heavy armor. I think we also have a little bit in Fighters Guild, so I have all the passives in Fighters Guild. I have mostly all of the passives in Mages Guild, none in Thieves Guild, but then we have all the passives in Undaunted, and that's pretty much all you need. If you want to go into PvP with this, you can use as one of the ultimates, take out Dawnbreaker and replace it with Sturdy Horn, and this basically is a way to support your allies trying to get like their stamina, magic and health bars back up. So it's a very good thing to have for PvP, because like I say, you can take this build into PvP if you're a PvP player. So that's it for the passives and the skills. Moving next into the actual character itself, so we have the armors. Now I do use a monster set and I do use 2 different sets. So the first set I use is Mark of the Pariah, mainly for the maximum health, but it also gives you physical resistance and spell resistance, and then the 5th piece is both physical and spell resistance of up to 10,000, nearly 11,000, which is very good to have as a tank. It's all about the critical resists and spell resists. Going into the monster set, I use Engine Guardian. I do sometimes switch between Engine Guardian and which one's it called? I think it's Lord Warden's Dusk. This gives you critical and spell resistance, and also gives you a big circle around you, also increasing critical and spell resistance even more. So again, 2 monster sets to have if you want to play monster sets: Engine Guardian and more of the Infernal. Sorry, Lord Warden Dusk even. And then the final of the actual armor sets, I use Juggernaut. And again, this is for the max health, the physical resistance, and again the second buff of max health. And then the 5th piece is when you take damage while under 30% health, you heal for 22,500 health. This can only affect every 1 minute, but Obviously, with all the shields and stuff you're proxing, the 1 minute does go pretty quick. So if you do go down to a last minute sort of panic mode and you're about to run out of health, if the minute's still not happened, then you can get 22,500 health back with the 5th piece bonus for this set. So I use that in, like I say, ring, jewelry, and all the armor, and then I've got like one hand and sword on both bars, basically. Front bar and back bar is one hand and sword. And I think the character, this is where things are pretty interesting. My health used to be 50.1k, but I changed a few things up recently, as you've seen the champion points. So I've got 47.3k health with Jugged Rabbit and Preserves as my food, so it increases my stamina, magicka, and health for 2 hours. So like I say, max magicka doesn't matter. I've got nothing in magicka, nothing in stamina, but 64 in health, because as a tank you need to stay alive as long as you can. Health recovery doesn't really matter too much, because like I say, you're going to be either doing your own heals or you have a healer in the group that's going to be healing you anyway. But your spell critical and weapon critical, again, don't really matter because you're a tank, so you're not doing damage, you're just taking damage. So the main bits are the spell resistance and the physical resistance. So unbuffed, they're 29,899 for spell resistance and 30.5k pretty much for physical resistance. If someone is using a Warden in your group and uses the one of the morphs for the Warden abilities, you can increase that to 35k spell resistance and 36k physical resistance, which is very, very good. I use, at the minute, the Boon of the Ritual. I need to change this to a different boon. Obviously, this is just my healing done, so it's basically for my self-heals. Just gets my health back up when I do actually need to use Green Blood or maybe Vigor. But that's pretty much all I use it for. I will change that to either like physical and spell resistance or something along the lines that would be a bit more beneficial to me. Just need to go and use it. And that's pretty much all I have to say, apart from, like I said, the champion points. The champion points are the most important part of the build, really. So we have 20 points in Warlord, and this reduces the cost of break free. And because I am a stamina tank, it is very good to have as many champion points in things that cost you less stamina to break out of stuff than you would like standard. So 20 points in Warlord just to reduce the cost of break free is good. And then into the Lover, we have 75 now in Arcanist and 76 in Tenacity. This basically increases your amount of stamina received from heavy attacks, and Arcanist is Magicka Recovery. I've only got it on Magicka Recovery because as a stamina tank, you're going to get 76 points out of Tenacity, so every heavy hit you get or light hit you get, you're going to get stamina regen. And because I've got 2 abilities or 3 abilities that are Magicka based, the Magicka Recovery is very important, because obviously you can't get that back with a sword and shield. You have to use stamina abilities to get your bar up. So yeah, if you're using a Magicka tank, if you're, for instance, a Warden, put the 75 points out of Arcanist and put it into Mooncast, your stamina's up. But if you're a pure Magicka build, put it into Magicka. If you're a pure stamina build, put it into stamina. But like I say, because I'm a stamina tank with a few Magicka things, I need some Magicka Recovery. Moving into the last bar, we have in the Shadow is Shadow Ward, and this reduces the cost of block. Obviously, more points than this, the better. Obviously, you're going to be standing there as a tank for a very long time holding the block button in between proxing your shields up. So obviously, the more points than this, the better. Moving into the Mage, we have 100% in Blessed and 100% in Elfborn. Now, the reason why I've got 100 points in Blessed is because the healing done, it's not for the group heals, it's for your self heals. So obviously, putting this up to the highest percent, when you do actually have to call a heal on yourself, you're going to heal for a hell of a lot more than you would with no points in this tree. And then moving on to Elfborn, it increases the damage and healing of your critical strikes. And because some of my stamina abilities are healing based, they do like give me health after the attack. It's very important to have some points in Elfborn to get the health back after your attacks if you can't get any health out using your abilities. Moving into the Atronach, I only have 22 points in Physical Weapon Expert, and this is just increasing the damage of your light and heavy attacks. You can put more points into that if you want to, but obviously it's not really important because, like I say, as a tank you're not really doing damage. But I had 22 points spare to go out of this bar, so I put it into Physical Weapon Expert. And I have nothing in any of this bar. You can, if you want to, put some points into Thermatage to make your choking talons and stuff more effective, but I would put the points into Physical Weapon Expert after you've got Elfborn and Blessed completely maxed. Going into the final bar, we have the Warrior. This is the Steed. I have 50 points in Ironclad. Now, I wouldn't go any higher than this because you don't really need to. And this is just reducing the damage taken against direct damage attacks. And like I say, 50 points is more than enough, so you don't really need to go any higher than that. Moving into the lady, I have 33 points in Hardy, 33 points in Elemental Defender, and 33 points in Thick Skinned. This is basically reducing your damage in over time effects, your physical poison disease damage, and flame, frost, shock, and magic damage. So obviously the more points in this the better, because you're not going to take damage from all those kind of attacks whilst you're tanking. As you know, it's not going to be too bad for you, pretty much. Moving into the Lord, we have 42 points. This is the most important one in Bastion. Now, Bastion is the effectiveness of your damage shields. If you've only got like a certain amount of points to use and you can't really fill these ones up as high, I would whack all the points into Bastion and then move them into these three here. But I've also got 11 points in Expert Defender, Quick Recovery, and Heavy Armor Focus. They pretty much explain themselves. So obviously Expert Defender reduces damage taken from light and heavy attacks. Quick Recovery is how much health you gain back when you're not actually calling any health on yourself. And Heavy Armor Focus is increasing your physical resistance whilst wearing heavy armor pieces. And obviously as a tank you wear heavy armor, so the more points in this the better again as well. But I would concentrate more on Bastion and Ironclad, and then work on these three here. And I think that's pretty much it, guys. So like I say, I will at some point get some gameplay of this tank up. If you want to head over to my channel, I've done live streams with this tank as well, so do feel free to go check them out. But I want to give you sort of like a lowdown on how the build works. There's not really a right or wrong way to play as a tank on ESO. Obviously, if you're a shit tank, it's going to notice when you're doing like veteran dungeons and trials and stuff. But if you follow a basis like this and make sure you've got your champion points set out, you're going to be pretty much good to go. Like I say, this tank can take a hell of a lot of damage, and you're not going to struggle to stay alive in the slightest. So yeah, hopefully you do enjoy this build, guys. Let me know if you do any changes to this build, if you want to play it differently. Do let me know in the comments below what you've done and if it's any effectiveness. And yeah, like I say, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.